So you are going to Epcot with your toddler and you are so excited, but you also don't know what you're going to be doing there? If so, this is the video for you. In this video, I'm going to give you my top rides for toddlers that do not have height requirements and which ones I recommend. If you're new here, hello and welcome. My name is Jenny, certified teacher, doctoral student, and mom to two girls, Alice, who is my 2-year-old, and Mina, who is my 11-month-old. And we are also annual pass holders at Walt Disney World and have been there many times with both girls. Now, I happen to be biased and believe that Epcot is the best park at Walt Disney World, so I was super excited to make this video and to take my girls and to really talk to you about honestly which rides were the best for them. When I go over each of my rides, I'm going to tell you a brief summary of what the ride entails, anything that's interesting about the wait as far as an interactive line or if the wait is really long, and then finally I'm going to let you know if there's any dark or scary elements to it and whether or not my girls were particularly afraid by something. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get into the first ride, which is the Living Seas with Nemo and Friends. The Living Seas with Nemo and Friends is basically a very slow-moving cart ride that goes through the underwater story of Finding Nemo. You wind up being spit out into the absolutely beautiful aquarium that they have at Epcot, which is Living Seas, or the Seas, and this ride is super fun and exciting. Now, there are moments of the ride that are a little bit scary, like when you see Bruce is a little bit scary, but Alice was not afraid of this ride. She's my 2-year-old, and this is definitely a ride that has a short wait. Now, the line to go through is also very neat because it looks like you're underwater, so when you're walking through it kind of looks like the sun is coming in and it looks like water on the ground. So the ride itself is really fun. Usually the wait is not very long, and also the queue is really nice. I feel like the Living Seas with Nemo and Friends is a home run as far as rides for toddlers go. There is no height requirement. I was allowed to bring Mina, my 10-month-old, and Alice, my 2-year-old, on this ride, and they both had a really good time. Alice really loved pointing out where Nemo was, where Dory was. She really liked the tunnel with Crush. She really liked Crush in general, and Squirt. So this is definitely one I would highly recommend you check out on your Epcot trip with your toddler. Ride number 2 that I recommend you check out with your toddler is the Three Caballeros, which is at Mexico in the World Showcase. So this Three Caballeros ride is basically when you walk into Mexico, it's going to be on the far left side, and it's kind of like through the gift shop store, and usually as far as wait goes, I've never waited for more than about 15-20 minutes maximum. Now, there's not much to look at in the actual line queue, but when you are initially coming up to the ride, you see the entirety of the store. So there's lots of colors to look at, there's people eating lunch or dinner, and you get into what is essentially a little boat, and you get to ride through Mexico. The part that I think is so great about this ride for my toddler is that Donald Duck is kind of like the main star of the ride, and so she really loved being able to see Donald in different places around the ride. There's nowhere on this ride that's particularly dark or scary, so it's a really good one if your child is a little bit afraid of rides. I love this one, and I love also too that the animatronics are finally back at the end. You get to see big animatronic Donald playing music and instruments, and so it's a lot of fun for your little one, especially if they like those kind of like classic Disney characters. It's a really good one. And also, hey, the line is all in air conditioning, so if you need a moment to just kind of like take a breath without all of that horrific Florida heat, it's a really good one to ride. So my third suggestion, which is a little bit different, it's not necessarily a ride, but this is a really good one if you need to just take a break from all those rides that you're doing, and that is the green space that they have at Epcot. Epcot actually has this wonderful outdoor permanent fixture playground, and it is basically on the walkway between where you would go between the right side of World Showcase and where Figment is, essentially. So if you were to go to Figment, for example, you could walk this walkway and the green space would be on your right. It is basically a giant playground. So if your child needs to get out of that stroller for a minute and just have a chance to run, it is a beautiful space, and it is set up entirely for kids to just play and have fun and enjoy the outside. Now, it is outdoors, but it does have turf grass underneath it, and it does close a little bit before the park does. However, I didn't find that to be a huge issue because it was open pretty much all day when I did need it. I think it's really important if you're having like that full Disney day to give your child chances to kind of get down, decompress, run around a little bit, and that green space is perfect for it. And if you're there doing Food and Wine Festival or Flower and Garden Festival, there's always booths that are in between where that green space is. So you can kind of enjoy something to eat while your little one is having a nice time inside the enclosed green space area. My next suggestion, and I almost hate to suggest it because one of the aspects of it is rough, is Frozen Ever After. So the reason I almost hesitate to suggest it is because the wait can be horrendous. It can be very, very long. Now I will say that most of the line is indoors, so it's air conditioned, and there are some cute things to look at within the line. As you walk through, you'll see like a little marquee that talks about why this is happening. You walk through the Big Summer Blowout store. There are things to look at. It's just that I have never been in that line and it take less than 45 minutes. So I would say maybe this is a good one for you to go through if your child is freshly rested, or maybe it's the first thing you do in the morning. However, that ride is perfect for kids. Alice literally, before we even got off the ride, said, "Do again." She absolutely loved it. This is basically a boat ride. They reskinned what used to be Maelstrom, and you are riding a little boat through to Anna and Elsa's kind of like celebration party. So there are a couple of dark moments in the ride, but there's nothing particularly scary. Everything in there is very upbeat and happy because it's not the story of Frozen, it's kind of like right after Frozen. But you do have like a hill that you go down, but it doesn't seem to be very scary. Alice thought it was great fun because it's Marshmallow that's kind of like pushing the boat along and pushing it down the hill, and Marshmallow is a good character. I cannot recommend this ride enough, especially if you have young ones that like Frozen. I mean, there's nothing better for them. It's worth the wait because of how excited they'll be seeing Anna and Elsa, being able to see them move and sing and talk. It's so worth it. The next ride on my list, and one of the favorites of mine, especially as a child, although it's changed since I was a child, is Journey into Imagination with Figment. So this ride is all about Figment, the dragon that is the figment of your imagination. You are going through basically like this little science lab, and it talks about your different senses. One of the good things about this ride is that, first of all, the line queue is very interesting. There's lots of things to look at. It looks like it's kind of like a science lab. It has doors with different people's names on them. And the second part that's really good about the line is that it's always really short. So you know you're not gonna have to wait for very long, and you get to ride all the way through and see Figment the dragon. The ride itself is basically working your way through your senses. There are a few moments that are loud. There's in the sound room, there is a train, and it's pretty loud and it's dark when they play that sound. But otherwise, everything's kind of just really whimsy and fun and colorful. You wind up going through Figment's house, which is all upside down, and there's just lots of colors. I love that, and I love Figment, and Alice loved it. And the best part is once you leave the Figment ride, there's an entire room where kids can kind of run around and play. So Alice had a lot of fun being able to direct music with her arm and being able to step on different pads on the floor that made sounds. So it's a very interactive room after you leave the Figment ride that toddlers and little ones can actually enjoy kind of playing around with. There are 3 other honorable mentions that I wanted to include here for rides that are really good for little ones. The first one is Living with the Land. So Living with the Land is a boat ride that also has Soarin' in it, and also a couple of restaurants. So Living with the Land is basically like a little boat ride that talks about living with the land. It's nothing particularly exciting, but I will say, first of all, the line is all indoors. And second of all, the line is always short. So if you wanted something just, you know, for your toddler to look at while riding a boat, Living with the Land is perfect. It talks about the kind of things they're doing at Epcot and how they're trying to be a little bit greener. But that's a great one for toddlers, and there is no height requirement. My second to last suggestion, and this is second to last because it's a if you have time sort of suggestion, and that is the new Ratatouille ride. So the new Ratatouille ride is basically you are Remy and you're running through, scurrying through a kitchen, and it's partially a virtual ride and partially a physical ride. The reason I leave it down here is, first of all, you can ride it with a toddler because there's no height requirement, but it does require 3D glasses, and at least for my toddler, she struggled to keep them on simply because the glasses were too big for her face. I mean, she couldn't fit them on her face. She liked the motion of the car kind of skittering through, but the line itself, while interesting, is long. It is a very long line. The theming is beautiful, but a lot of it's going to be outdoors, the line, because it just winds up being so very long. If you happen to be at the park early and you wanted to try to tackle this one, it is very neat. It's a really cool ride. The way they did it is really, really neat. It's worth checking out. It's just, I don't know that I would wait with a toddler for 110 minutes for it, because they're not going to get as much out of it as you are hoping because of the 3D glasses piece. It's really hard to get a toddler to wear 3D glasses. The last ride recommendation I have for you, and probably the kind of, you know, hallmark ride of Epcot, is Spaceship Earth. So Spaceship Earth is, of course, the giant golf ball that you see right down there in the very beginning of the park, and it is a slow-moving ride that kind of goes through the golf ball, through the history of communication of the world. There are parts that are dark, but I don't find any of it particularly scary. The only part that might be a little scary, I guess, is the fire. There is a part where there is a fire and you can smell the flames, but it's not, you know, flashing or super scary, but the whole ride is dark. So that is something, if your child is afraid of the dark, maybe don't bring them for that. But Alice did just fine on it. She was totally cool with it. She did want to keep getting up because, you know, it's slow moving and it's a fairly long ride, but she did like looking at all of the things and all the animatronics. There's some really cool animatronics in there, and you get to kind of pick your future. So I let Alice basically tap whatever she wanted on the screen, and we just went with that for whatever our future was going to be. So those are all of the no height requirement rides that I wanted to mention in this. I hope it was helpful for you and you come up with some ideas for how to integrate some fun for your little ones and your toddler. I know, like I said, my favorite park is Epcot, and I knew that it was important to me to figure out a way that my daughter could enjoy it too, considering that a lot of people don't think about the fact that there really are things that your little ones can do there. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing. I do all sorts of Disney content, educational content, developmental milestone content, and I would love to have you along for the ride. I also have a whole series of all the different parks, so if you want to check it out right up here, I will put it right up there for you. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.